In this video, we're going to write the equation for perpendicular lines. So before we can write the equations for perpendicular lines, we first need to discuss what two perpendicular lines are. So remember that two lines are perpendicular if they intersect in a very special way. So here we have the first line, and here we have the second line. And with perpendicular lines, what happens is these are two lines that intersect and form 90-degree angles when they intersect. So we have two lines that form 90-degree angles or right angles when they intersect. So they will intersect. They're not like parallel lines where they don't intersect. They do. And when they do intersect, they form 90-degree angles. So this is a very special type of intersection. Now, the other thing we need to remember is we need to remember that these two lines that are intersecting, that are perpendicular lines, actually have a very special slope relationship. So when two lines are perpendicular, their slopes are what are called opposite reciprocals. And what this word opposite reciprocals means is that these two slopes are opposite signs, so one will be positive and one will be negative. And then the reciprocals piece means that they are flipped fractions versions of themselves. So just to give you a little example, we'll do that over here. An example is, say we have the number, positive 1/2. The opposite reciprocal of positive 1/2, since this is a positive, is a negative. Flip the fraction, 2/1. So what happens with perpendicular lines is their slopes are what are called opposite reciprocals. So in this first example, we're going to write the equation in slope-intercept form that passes through this given point here of x is 6, y is 2, and is perpendicular to this line given right here. So what we know about my line that I am writing the equation for is we know that it goes through the point 6, 2, and we know that they don't give us the slope, but that we can find it by utilizing our knowledge of perpendicular lines. So here it's saying we're perpendicular to this line here. I know that perpendicular lines have those opposite reciprocal slopes. So essentially, if I can find the slope of this line, I can then use my knowledge of opposite reciprocals to find the slope of my line. So to start, we're going to find the slope of this line boxed in blue over here. So in order to find the slope, we need to get y by itself so that it's in slope-intercept, or y equals mx plus b form. So we're going to start by subtracting 12x on each side. So then we have negative 4y is equal to 24 plus negative 12x. Divide both sides by a negative 4. So I have y is equal to negative 6 plus 3x. So here I can see that the slope of my line over here is 3. And I'm going to use this knowledge to help me find my slope of my line over here. Now I know that perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes, so I can start with 3/1. That's what my slope of this line is. And the slope of my line over here is going to have an opposite reciprocal slope. So that means it's going to be a negative because they're opposite signs. And then reciprocal means flip the fraction, so we have a negative 1/3 as the slope of our line over here in purple. So we have a slope of negative 1/3. Now because I have my line's point and slope, I can now ignore this piece over here and just focus on writing the equation of my line through the point 6, 2, and with a slope of negative 1/3. So I take y minus my y coordinate of 2 is equal to a negative 1/3 times x minus my x coordinate of negative 6. Then I know that in order to start this process of writing it into slope-intercept form, I need to distribute, and I'm going to utilize keep, change, change to prevent any errors. So then from there, I have negative 1/3 x plus Well, it's a negative 1/3 times a negative 6 over 1. I know a negative times a negative is a positive. Then I'm getting 6 over 3, so that would be plus 2. And then from here, in order to get the y alone, I add 2 to each side. So we have y equals negative 1/3 x plus 4. And what I can see from here is that this is the equation of a line that goes through my point of x is 6, y is 2, and has an opposite reciprocal slope to the line over here boxed in blue because they are perpendicular. In the second example, we're going to write the equation in slope-intercept form for the line that passes through the point negative 1, 3 and is perpendicular to this line over here boxed in blue. So we're perpendicular to this line and we're going through the point negative 1, 3. So I'm going to start with my line and record what I know about my line. So I know that my line is going through the point negative 1, 3. That's what I have been given. And I know that I need to find the slope of my line before I can write the equation of a line. Now, what's important to note is that I do know that I am perpendicular to this line over here, and I know that perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes. So if I can find the slope of this line in blue, I can find the slope of my line over here in purple. So I'm going to start by subtracting 3x from each side of the equation to get 4y is equal to 8 plus negative 3x. Divide both sides by 4. So I have y is equal to 2 plus negative 3/4 x. So what I know here is that my line over here in purple is perpendicular to this line over here in blue. So I need to pay attention to this slope right here because since they are perpendicular, I know that we have opposite reciprocal slopes. So I have negative 3/4. Then I need to find the opposite reciprocal. So opposite signs means that this one will be positive, and reciprocal means flip the fraction. So there we have 4/3 as our slope. So from here, I can now ignore this piece over here because I already have a point and a slope for my line. So I can go and write y minus my y coordinate of 3 is equal to 4/3 times in parentheses x minus my x coordinate of negative 1. Now from here, I notice that I have a keep, change, change situation, so those two negatives together actually equal a plus. Then from here, I start by using the distributive property. So I have y minus 3 is equal to 4/3 x, and I know 4/3 times 1 is just 4/3. So I do have a fraction in here, but luckily I know how to work with fractions. So my next step is I'm going to add 3 to each side to get the y alone. So I have y equals 4/3 x, and then I need to add together 4/3 plus 3. Now I know that in order to add numbers I need to have a common denominator, so I'm going to give it a common denominator of 3. So we're going to multiply the top and the bottom by 3. I get 4/3 plus 9/3. Then I can add those together to get 13/3. So here I add together, and I have 13/3, which can also be written as 4 1/3. So here what I have is I have the equation of a line that goes through this given point and is perpendicular to this line here, so I can see that I have opposite reciprocal slopes.